List the intercepts and test for symmetry. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to list the intercepts. So we're thinking x-intercepts. And if it's an x-intercept, that means y equals 0. So that's going to be 4x squared. Now again, if I plug in 0 for y here, I'm going to get 0 squared, which is 0. So that's just going to be 0. So it goes away. So I get 4x squared equals 4. So now I'm going to divide by 4 both sides. And then x squared equals 1. Now I'm going to square root both sides. And x is going to equal to plus or minus 1. Because remember, when I square root, it's plus or minus. Square root of 1 is 1 because 1 times 1 is 1. And this is going to give me 2 points here because I got the plus or minus, and my x is negative 1. So negative 1, 0, or 1, 0. So those are my two x-intercepts. Now I'm going to do my y-intercepts. So my y-intercepts. Okay, that means my x is 0. So now if my x is 0, that's here. That would be 0 squared, which is 0, times 4, which is 0. So that goes away. I end up with y squared equals 4. So now I'm going to square root both sides. So I get y equals plus or minus 2. So for those two, I'm going to get 0, negative 2, and then 0, 2 for the other one. So those are my intercepts. I actually have 4 intercepts for this problem. So now let's move on to the next part, because now we listed the intercepts. Now let's test for symmetry. So again, let's go back to that first case, the x-axis. Okay, let's see what that means here. I'm going back. So this one here was symmetric to the x-axis. So what does that mean for us then? So that means if I have a point up here, I have an x and a y, and I move it down here or shoot it down here, whatever you want to say, the x is going to be the same, but what happens with the y? It's not positive anymore. It's not above the x. It's actually below it. So that means it would be negative y down there. So that tells me in my equation, I'm going to plug in negative y for y. So 4x squared plus negative y in for y squared equals 4. Now keep in mind I'm squaring this negative y, so a negative times a negative is positive. So this is actually going to be 4x squared plus y squared equals 4, which is the same equation in the beginning. So that tells me then, since that's the case, that yes, this is symmetric with respect to the x-axis. So now let's try the next one, the y-axis. Now for the y-axis, let's go back and take a look at one of these problems that was symmetric with respect to the y. And the only one that was this last one here. So that means if my point is here, now I'm talking about the y now. Okay, call that xy. And I move it this way. Now keep in mind here, the same height, the height is the same for both of those, which tells me my y is going to stay the same. And what happened was I went across the y there, so I'm going to negate my x. So I'm negating x here. That's what I'm doing. So for our problem, I would get 4 negative x squared plus y squared equals 4. So then negative x times negative x is positive x squared. So this is really 4x squared plus y squared equals 4. And you realize that's exactly the same as the original. So that tells me then that yes, it's symmetric about the y-axis. Now the last test is the origin. Is this symmetric with respect to the origin? So what we do is when we think about that origin, now remember, just like this example here where I take a positive xy here and I shoot it through the other side, and that's going to actually be a negative x, negative y. So what that's telling me is that I'm going to plug in a negative x and negative y to see if it's symmetric with respect to the origin. Okay, so 4 And honestly, don't we know this is going to work? Because they worked individually, definitely tells me that they're going to work together. So this is going to be 4x squared plus y squared equals 4. So again, they're all yes. And the reason why they're yes is this actually looks similar to this graph C here. It's what we call an ellipse. And I could tell just by the equation there. And what's nice about it is you want to really try to understand those graphs sometimes, because you can save yourself a lot of time in finding intercepts. You will know how many you need or have, just if you can picture some of these graphs a little bit from the equations. But there's the answers for this one. So again, it's symmetric with respect to all three, and I have 4 intercepts. Now remember, label your intercepts as x-intercepts and y-intercepts, not just intercepts in a list of numbers or a list of points.